The gate agent's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing yet another delay, and Mara Ellison sank deeper into the hard plastic seat at gate 22, wondering if the universe was personally trying to ruin her night. She'd driven 90 minutes from her apartment in Ohio to catch a connecting flight to Chicago, all so she could meet a man named Chris R., from a dating app her sister had begged her to try. "You never go out anymore, Mara. You deserve one nice dinner where you're not the one paying and packing lunches for a 6-year-old. Her sister's words had stuck with her more than she wanted to admit. Mara was 32, a single mother to a boy named Eli, and she had not been on a real date in 4 years. Not since Eli's father decided fatherhood wasn't his season of life, and left her with a diaper bag, a mortgage, and a heart that had learned to stay quiet. Tonight was supposed to be different. Just dinner. Just 1 hour of feeling like a woman again instead of a walking to-do list. She checked her phone. Running late. SRY. At the airport bar. Red jacket. Come find me, Chris. Red jacket. Airport bar. Fine. She smoothed her dress, took a breath, and walked into the dim little lounge attached to the terminal, her heels clicking against tile that had seen 1,000 tired travelers. And there, at the far end of the bar, sat a man in a red jacket, elbows on the counter, staring into a glass of amber liquid like it owed him money. Her stomach flipped. She didn't recognize him. Of course she didn't. She'd never met Chris R. in person. But something about the set of his shoulders, the way he sat like he was carrying the weight of a boardroom on his back, made her hesitate for just a second before she squared herself and walked over. "Chris," she said, forcing a smile. The man turned, and Mara's whole body went cold. It wasn't Chris. It was Daniel Cole. Her home from Lincoln High School, because he said it wasn't safe for her to go alone, even though their town was safe as churches on Sunday. The boy who wrote her name on the inside cover of his notebook in 10th grade, thinking no one would ever see it. The boy who kissed her for the first time behind the bleachers during a thunderstorm, both of them soaked and laughing, 16 years old and stupid with hope. The boy who left for California the summer after graduation and never came back. 14 years. 14 years since she'd seen that face, and here it was, staring back at her in an airport bar in a red jacket that was clearly not a coincidence-proof disguise, because red jackets, apparently, were just a thing rich men wore now. Mara. His voice cracked slightly on her name, like it was a word he hadn't let himself say in a long time. She should have said something. She should have laughed it off, explained the mix-up, turned around and walked back to gate 22 to wait for the actual Chris. That would have been the smart thing. The safe thing. Instead, she stood frozen, staring at the man who broke her heart before she even knew what a broken heart felt like. "You're not Chris," she finally managed. "No," Daniel said slowly, setting down his glass. "I'm not." There was a beat of silence between them, thick as fog, and Mara felt the old ache rise in her chest, not just heartbreak, but shame. Shame for the life she'd built that didn't look like the one she used to dream about. Shame for the wrinkles at the corners of her eyes, for the flight she almost couldn't afford, for the 6-year-old at home with her mother who thought she was on a grown-up dinner. But Daniel wasn't looking at her like she was something to pity. He was looking at her like she was something he'd lost. "I know this is strange," he said carefully, "but would you sit down? Just for a minute." She should have said no. She sat down. What Mara didn't know, what she couldn't have known from a decade-old memory of a boy in a Letterman jacket, was that the man sitting across from her now was Daniel Cole, founder and CEO of Coleworks Dynamics, a logistics tech company that had gone from a garage in Sacramento to a 9-figure valuation in under a decade. Forbes had put him on a 30 under 40 inches list 2 years ago. He'd shaken hands with senators. He owned a home in Malibu that had a name instead of an address. None of that mattered to him in this moment. What mattered was that Mara Ellison, the girl who used to save him the last seat on the bus, who used to slip poetry into his backpack, who he had thought about more times than he'd ever admit to another living soul, was sitting 3 feet away from him, and she had no idea who he'd become. And for reasons even he couldn't fully explain, he didn't tell her. "Not yet." "So," Mara said, trying to steady her voice, "you just happen to be sitting at this exact bar, in a red jacket, the same night I'm supposed to meet a total stranger named Chris." "Small world," Daniel said, and the corner of his mouth twitched. That same crooked half-smile she used to fall asleep thinking about. Small world doesn't usually feel like a punch to the chest, she said quietly. His smile faded. Yeah, I know the feeling. They sat there a moment, two people orbiting 14 years of unfinished business, and then Mara's phone buzzed. A text from the real Chris. Sorry, actually can't make it tonight. Family thing came up. Rain check. She stared at the screen, half laughing, half wanting to cry. Let me guess, Daniel said. Chris bailed. Chris bailed, she confirmed. He should have let her go. Should have wished her a safe flight and disappeared back into the life of first-class lounges and quarterly earnings calls that had swallowed him whole. But something in him, the same stubborn, aching something that had never quite let go of a girl from Ohio, made him say the words instead. Don't let her eat alone tonight. Mara blinked. What? That's what I keep thinking, he admitted, almost embarrassed. Some voice in my head, telling me not to let you eat alone tonight. So, humor me, have dinner with me, not as a blind date, not as anything, just as two old friends whose flights got delayed. She should have said no. She said yes. They found a quiet restaurant tucked near Gate 31, the kind of place with white tablecloths that felt out of place in an airport, the kind of place Mara would never normally walk into because places like that made her calculate the cost of the bread basket. Daniel didn't even glance at the prices. Over appetizers, they talked about nothing, flights, weather, the absurdity of airport bars, until the nothing slowly became something. Mara told him about Eli, about the exhaustion of raising a boy alone, about the promotion she didn't get last year because she couldn't stay late for the client dinners. She told him without performing it, without softening it for pity, and Daniel listened like every word mattered. He sounds incredible, Daniel said when she showed him a photo of Eli grinning with a missing front tooth. You did that, alone. I didn't have a choice. You still did it, he said, and something in his voice made her look up. Then it was his turn, and this was where the evening cracked open. I have to tell you something, he said, setting down his fork. And I should have told you the second you sat down. Mara's stomach tightened. You're married. No, he almost laughed. No. Nothing like that. Mara. I'm not just some guy passing through this airport. I'm not between jobs or visiting family. He exhaled. I'm the CEO of a company called Coalworks Dynamics. It's a fairly large company. I fly private, usually. Tonight my jet had a mechanical issue, so I got stuck here like everyone else, which is the first ordinary thing that's happened to me in years. Mara stared at him, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. You're kidding, she said. I'm not. You're telling me the boy who used to split a $5 pizza with me because that's all we had between us is now she searched for the word, a millionaire. Technically, he said, with the grace to look uncomfortable, more than that. But I didn't want that to be the first thing you knew about me tonight. I wanted you to talk to me. Not the company, not the number in some article. Just me, like before. For a long moment, Mara said nothing. Old hurt and new confusion tangled together in her chest, because on one hand, the boy who left her had become exactly the kind of untouchable, unreachable man she'd have every reason to resent. And on the other hand, he had spent this entire dinner not once acting like it. Why didn't you ever come back? She finally asked, and it wasn't an accusation. It was the question that had lived under her ribs for 14 years. Daniel's jaw tightened. Because I was 18 and terrified and broke, and I told myself I had nothing to offer you yet. I told myself I'd come back once I had something. Once I could give you the life I thought you deserved. He shook his head. I didn't understand back then that the only thing you ever actually wanted was me. Not money. Not some future version of me. Just me, staying. I would have waited, Mara whispered. I know that now, he said. I know that now. And it's the biggest regret of my entire life, and I've built an entire company trying to outrun that regret. The restaurant noise faded around them. Mara felt 14 years of carefully built walls trembling. I'm not the girl you left, she said finally. I'm tired. I'm a mom. I have stretch marks and a beat-up minivan and a job that barely covers daycare. I'm not some fairy tale. Good, Daniel said, because I never wanted a fairy tale. I wanted you. They didn't notice how much time had passed until the overhead speakers crackled. final boarding call for Flight 118 to Chicago. Mara's flight. Panic flickered in her chest. Not about the flight, but about the man across from her disappearing into the same silence he'd disappeared into 14 years ago. "That's me," she said, standing, gathering her purse with hands that weren't quite steady. Daniel stood too. "Mara, don't," she said softly, though there was no anger in it. "Don't say something big right now. I can't. I have a son waiting for me. I have a life that doesn't have room for airport movie moments." "I'm not asking for an airport movie moment," Daniel said. "I'm asking for your number. That's all. Not a promise. Not a plane ticket to some new life. Just a chance to not disappear again." She hesitated at the mouth of the jet bridge, boarding pass trembling slightly in her fingers, torn between the practical woman she'd had to become and the 16-year-old girl who still lived somewhere underneath the exhaustion. "If I give this to you," she said, "and you disappear again." "I won't. You said that before." "I was 18 before," he said. "I'm not 18 anymore. I know exactly what it costs to lose you. I already paid that price once." Mara looked at him. Really looked. And saw not the CEO, not the red jacket, not the 9-figure company. She saw the boy who used to walk her home in the rain, grown into a man who was finally choosing to stay instead of leave. She pulled a pen from her purse, took his hand, and wrote her number across his palm like it was 14 years ago and they were still just two kids who didn't know yet how much the world could take from them. "Don't waste it," she said. "I won't," he said again. And this time, it sounded like a vow instead of a hope. Eli Ellison, age 7, sat cross-legged on the living room floor building a Lego airport, complete with a tiny plastic man he named Mr. Daniel, because, as he informed anyone who would listen, Mr. Daniel flies real planes and he's gonna marry my mom. Mara, standing in the kitchen doorway watching her son play, felt her phone buzz. A text from Daniel, currently 3 time zones away, closing a deal that would, according to the news, reshape West Coast logistics infrastructure. Landing in 4 hours. Tell Eli I'm bringing the toy plane I promised. And tell yourself I'm bringing something for you too. She smiled, the kind of smile she hadn't let herself feel in years, unguarded, unafraid, unweighted by the fear that this, too, would disappear. 14 years ago, a boy had left her at a bus stop with nothing but a promise he didn't know how to keep. Tonight, a man was flying across the country to keep it. And somewhere over Nebraska, in seat 2A of a jet with his company's name stenciled on the tail, Daniel Cole looked out the window at the darkening sky and thought about a girl who once wrote her number on his palm like it was the most important thing she'd ever given anyone. It was.